Hi, welcome back to the Healing Medicine Show as part of the Healing Medicine newsletter. I'm your host, Blair Thielemeyer of Pharmapreneur Academy. Just a reminder, if you guys are joining us live here for the first time, this is a show that provides a platform for health and healing professionals to grow in their understanding and practice of what it means to be a healer. So we aim to provide healthcare professionals with this resource as well as inspiration through the form of interviews and professional development practices to those professionals who are interested in holistic health. We believe that this change in the healthcare system can happen by focusing on the health and healing of the individual healthcare provider. So if you have a colleague who would enjoy this show, please send them the link to subscribe to the Healing Medicine newsletter so they can get notified the next time we go live. So today's guest is Dr. Brigette Serfaty. Brigette, thank you so much for joining us here today.
It is a pleasure. Been looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So your background is in nuclear pharmacy. You're an associate professor of pharmacy practice at my alma mater and yours as well, UAMS, the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences in Little Rock. But you and I connected over kind of a totally different type of pharmacy practice, one that's rooted in personal development, rooted in mindfulness practices, in meditation and yoga and health and well-being. So I invited you here on this show because I think you have a very unique perspective to be able to offer to our audience here today. So I want to start this interview by asking the same question that I'm starting off asking in all of this, the interview series here on the Healing Medicine Show, which is, what does healing mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great question. It's a big one. So I love that you ask it. I think healing for me, as well as for every person, whether it's client or patient, is individual. So it's for me, it's really looking at the whole person, body, mind, spirit, the environment that they're in. And that's whether I'm talking about a client, myself, a member of my family. I always start there is, what does it mean to them? What kind of healing are they looking for? So, but it's a lot more to me than healing just that outer physical misery that brought them there, which is usually stress or anxiety or weight or the number in the lab test or whatever it is, something that somebody's told them should be better. To me, it's really more about their life and what does that mean to them? What do they want out of it? What's meaningful? What's bigger than just that number? So I'm trying to get at that when I'm trying to get at healing with my people. So it's more about the meaning than the specific modality or the specific objective. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. And something you said to me that was really interesting was the environment. Like, that is not something that we're trained to ask about in the healthcare profession, yet it has such an impact on if a patient's coming in to seek therapy for anxiety, for example, or they're seeing chronic illness as a result of chronic stress. So a lot of cardiovascular disease as a result of chronic stress. The ability to take our focus off of the mechanical approach of this physical symptom is manifesting, and it's manifesting in a way that's showing the blood pressure is elevated. We can treat it with this medicine, but in order to really look at and heal the problem, maybe there needs to be a conversation around boundaries, around time prioritization. So how would you even approach that with a client?
Yeah, I mean, so my training, in addition to nuclear pharmacy, which was a long time ago, my more recent training is in integrative health coaching. And one of those things we look at is surroundings. And so that's the physical environment that you're in. It's what you put in your body. It's who you surround yourself with. It's literally what's on your desk. What does the decor look like? It's all of those conversations about, is your space healing or is your space toxic? And so it's simply a conversation that I have about surroundings. How do you feel in them? And that just leads to a lot of conversation for my people that are all those overworked, overscheduled, anxious, chronic overachiever people. When we start talking about environment, they really either light up or just collapse altogether, because so much of their stress comes from where they are, their work cultures, their busyness mostly. You mentioned boundaries, their lack of them, the calendar that's over full. There's so much that comes with that. And so environment is a great place for me to mine for where's the misery really coming from. And it's also an easy place for clients to take fast action. Sometimes it's a matter of just really sitting down, because they can see results from looking at their calendar very quickly. What's on that calendar that isn't serving you? Do you really need to be in all these meetings? So that conversation's easier sometimes than the spiritual piece they're not willing to address, the relationship piece that's harder, even the physical stuff, the emotional health. Sometimes environment's just easier to get to be honest. So we start there a lot because they see fast wins.
I love that. And so that, looking at your calendar really shows where your priorities in your life, whether or not you want to admit that, getting kind of used to taking a look at that calendar, going, man, I'm spending a lot of time volunteering for boards and PTA meetings and all of these things because I get asked. And I think many, like you said, many of your clients are high achieving, very capable, very brilliant professionals that just because they can doesn't necessarily mean they should. And so that starts a conversation really thinking about, because we're overworked, because we're feeling burnt out, because we're feeling like we're trapped. That's the word that many pharmacists will use, and healthcare professionals as well. They're feeling trapped. They spent all this money on getting a professional degree, and it's what they thought that they wanted, and then they get into it and just realize that it wasn't at all what they were expecting. So the question becomes, what type of healing needs to take place within the individual healthcare professional so that they can begin this healing process for themselves.
Yeah, and I really think it's the clarity on what of these things that I'm doing is really aligned with my values, who I want to be, how I want to show up in the world, and what isn't. So that, I always start with that values work. Like, who are you? Because people lose touch with that, with just all the volume. They just get busy and they kind of forget even what the priorities were, just because they're executing the list. They're driven high performers, and they just get so far from themselves sometimes. And me too. That's what put me on this whole I got to do something differently journey, was my own overwhelm and like, what in the hell is going on here? I got to do something about this. And so the healing really comes when you start to get clear and move the things out that aren't part of who you are, the work that you want to do in the world, what you're really good at, the people you want to spend time with. Just, it's all that just basic stuff that you want to spend your time on that we put aside,
I love that. And I think this has kind of been a recurring theme on this show, this piece of self-discovery. Because I like to say that business is a self-expression. It's an act of self-expression. It's really, really hard to express yourself when you don't know who you are and what you stand for and what your values are. So I completely agree that that's a wonderful place to start. Within the healing, the healthcare system, where I'm curious as to your own personal journey, what began to spark that for you whenever you reached that point that it was like, I need to do something has got to give. I don't know what's going on, but I know that this is no longer serving me and my best interest. What was the beginning of maybe even the just first few steps that you began to take on that healing journey?
I won't go too far back. I'm just going to say pharmacy school was hell. It was like hell week for me. And so I really started seeing the stress even back then. And I was what, 20? So I found yoga then. So I started practicing yoga in 1990. That was my initial foray. And I got to do something different to manage my stress because all the other things weren't working. I was carrying a bottle of Maalox in my backpack. Like, okay, this is stupid. So I had to do something differently. And that's where I started. And it's led me really to meditation and mindfulness. And some people think about that as a checking out, like I need to relax and I need to de-stress. And it does that. But for me, it's mindfulness is what helped me check in. So I had this really long corporate career where it's long, it's convoluted, it's hard to explain, but most of it was high stress, high travel, a lot of merger and integration, and putting together teams that ultimately were not particularly happy about being put together. So there was a lot of just managing through that change and trying to figure out ways to keep them happy and also not ignore myself. What I did forever was ignore myself. And so I was about to hit the burnout wall just from a health perspective. My blood pressure was up. I wasn't sleeping at all. I had gotten divorced, which is a whole nother podcast that you don't need to hear about. But, just all the things that I was ignoring. And I really started to see some of that anxiety manifesting in my daughter, who was young at that time. And that's what made me take a hard look to say, I got to do something different. So that's when I started on this integrative health journey. Was what else can I do? Yoga and mindfulness are awesome. And I'm not doing enough of it. And what else do I need to do every day? So it was more about just what are those habits that I needed to do on a Tuesday, at 2:00, not just when I went on a vacation or a retreat or whatever. How could I incorporate that? And that's really where the health coaching journey helped me, was to get clear on what I needed to do so that I could help other people do that too. It's those easy strategies that actually move the needle for me.
I think, I had this conversation earlier today about health coaching and the idea of pharmacists having the opportunity to be health coaches. And people said, okay, well, the question was, are pharmacists trained in that way to be able to be health coaches? And I said, well, to me, in order to be a good coach, you need to be willing to receive coaching. So
absolutely,
being coachable yourself needs to be a prerequisite for being a coach. So I love that you talked about that and talked about carrying Maalox in your backpack. I mean, that resonated with me. Through high school, through undergrad, through pharmacy school, I was on a PPI, and it was really, I think, because of the stress and the pressure I was putting on myself to perform, to succeed, to be an overachiever. And it was when I stopped to take a look at, why am I doing these things? Why am I constantly, I'll meet one goal, not even take the time to celebrate it, on to the next thing, give me the next challenge, superwoman, just let me take it all on. And when when I finally gave myself permission to stop that kind of vicious cycle of overachieving, I had a existential crisis, like, who am I without all of these things, and without constantly going after the next certification or the next presentation or job or whatever it was that I wanted. You also said something that I think would be interesting to explore for the audience, because many of the people watching here, they may not have ever experienced meditation. They may, have heard stuff about it, or even yoga. And you said it's not really about checking out. It's
Mm.
about checking back in. And so there's a lot of published data around using mindfulness, meditation or yoga, whatever you want to call it, deep breathing exercises, to shift from the fight or flight into the slower, calmer nature. And so I think that's something that healthcare professionals can really wrap their heads around, but it comes from a place of personal experience. So do you have a particular uh, method of meditation and yoga that you recommend for those who are just kind of starting out on their journey?
Yeah, and so I think just basic mindfulness practice is the way to start, which is just simply checking in, and you can sit and notice your breath, notice your thoughts, notice your emotions. And so there's that slowing down and paying attention to then decide, to then what is the next wise thing. But that just mindfulness practice is the way I would start. I use apps,
Mhm.
there are a variety of them. I use them if I'm trying to go to sleep at night, but sometimes I prefer just a sit, watch your breath practice, because that's when the demons come up. And that's really what we're trying to get a handle on, is how are we actually feeling. So a lot of the if it's app driven, it can feel like one more thing on a to-do list or entertainment.
Right.
So I actually think the seated practice is really where you start to notice how you're really feeling. So that's what I would recommend, is just a basic mindfulness practice.
I love that. And from my perspective, so whenever I started, I was studying a master's in consciousness and human potential with Maharishi International University, and a prerequisite to start that master's program was a course called Transcendental Meditation,
Mm.
where we learn this transcendental meditation technique, and you're given a mantra. So you're given a word to repeat
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over in your mind. And I'm going in there thinking, there is no way that I'm going to, that I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to get so bored and blah, blah, blah. I never got bored. It was interesting to see how many thoughts, and to be able to practice noticing the thoughts
Mhm.
without acting on them, and to notice the number of thoughts that were coming in. Here,
Mhm.
I'm holding my mantra, I'm holding my breath, I'm thinking about why my stomach is rumbling, I'm thinking about that I need to respond to this email. And it's like, who am I in the space between those thoughts?
Yeah.
And that was when I started the real self exploration piece of it. That's like, who is the self underneath all the thoughts?
Mhm.
What is the, that essence, I guess, of the self that I've never given a chance to just sit and breathe?
Yep. And really pay attention to that question, what is called for? What is called for now? And usually it's not the thing that I was going to do next.
Right.
It's usually what is called for now is I need to sit and breathe some more to really figure out what's going on here and do nothing with it. It's the act of doing nothing with it that I think is so important, that you said just watch it and let it go. Um, and so yes, to go back to what you said, it does take us out of fight or flight and into parasympathetic, but that's not about relaxation. It's about response. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think a lot of us get wrong. And I know that's what I got wrong initially. I thought it was all about relaxation, not about the really wise response. So bringing the wisdom back online, this part of your brain, the wise part, can respond, not the reptilian part.
Yes.
So yeah, when
Yes.
I'm in fight or flight, I got nothing else. It's helpful.
So, it's approaching from like being able to build. We talked about intuition on one of our past episodes of
Mm,
the show. We talked about being able to tap into that. And I think throughout my life, I've received glimpses of
mm,
intuition, but it had never been something that, like, oh, this is a skill that I can use every single day in my business. Because I meet
yeah.
so many people every single day on a weekly basis that muscle can just kind of go, okay, is this someone that I'm connecting with on an energetic level, and being able to check in with myself of like, how am I feeling about this? Because like you said, sometimes there is, well, I will say most times there is power in the not responding.
Mhm.
So feeling like you have to respond to every single thing that is said to you, every single opportunity that's presented, throughout the day. It's like realizing, you know what? That was kind of a cutting remark. I don't need to respond to that. Or someone, said something that I don't agree with. Instead of arguing, I don't have to respond to that. And it's made me such a happier person
Oh my
to
gosh.
realize that.
Yeah, no kidding. And easier to live with too. That's
Mhm,
because you're not reacting. You really are choosing a response. And that's
mhm,
very, very different. The other thing that I really like to use mindfulness for is just to clear away the clutter, you know, because, whether it's intuition that you're listening to or just deep longing,
mhm,
you have to be present to know what that is. So you can't be in the future with your to-do list, or we're all goal oriented, but you can't stay there. You can't live there. You have to come back to what needs to be done right now that moves me that direction, but it's not about that direction. It's about what needs to be done right now. It's that wise response again.
And I think, kind of going back to how this makes us, um, not only better humans, like, so there's this show that I saw that, I don't know if you've seen it. It's the guy's name's Caesar, and he's a dog trainer,
The dog trainer, yes.
and
Yes.
it's called Better Human, Better Dog. And
Yes.
I'm like, that's like better human, better healthcare professional, like
Uh-huh.
better human, better parent, better human, better spouse. Like
Yeah.
that, it's just those are the implications that we're talking about
Yeah.
having, on your life. So, not that there's this competitiveness that, like, oh, more righteous than thou kind of thing,
Mhm.
but more of an internal competitiveness of seeing, okay, if I feel like I have to respond to every sarcastic remark, is it coming from a place of defensiveness because part of me thinks that that remark is true and I need to respond to it, versus I don't take any stock in that remark because I know in my heart that it's untrue, and I really don't need to, I don't need to feel like I need to respond to it. So to me, been a huge part of my healing journey. And I think as we're moving forward, moving out of the pandemic, hopefully,
Mhm.
there are some things, that have been coming up that have divided,
Mm.
people, that they're looking for more holistic, options. In addition to, there's a time and a place for allopathic medicine, but
Mm.
this integrative healthcare model is really interesting to me because what it's doing, getting to the root of healing, it's allowing us to see ourselves as healers again. So I think it's important that we begin to see ourselves as healers And that not only that, we empower our patients to take ownership of their own healing. If they see themselves as healers, then it's much less like do as I say. It's more like what feels in alignment for you moving forward that's going to get you to your health goals. So I'd love to
Absolutely.
hear, yeah, I'd love to hear kind of your take on that. Like why do you feel it's important to adopt this healer mentality for healthcare professionals?
So the what you said about the patient, the client has to believe in their capacity, their own capacity to choose wisely. And I think the healing part for the healthcare professional is you're the guide to their healing. You're not the healer, like you're not doing unto them. You're eliciting what is it that will be healing, and you use your expertise, of course, if they're completely off track, to suggest modalities or suggest treatments. But it still has to be a conversation and a partnership with that patient rather than just delivering on high. You know, it's
I love
it's a
that.
real paradigm shift. And the other thing that is, we see ourselves as healers, we have to heal our own lives so that our patients take our advice seriously. You know, it's really challenging when you start talking about lifestyle with a patient if it's pretty clear that you're not, as a healthcare professional, paying attention to your own. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where the healing ourselves first really comes into play, so that we can help our patients do the same thing. We can be more empathetic to the challenges of setting those goals and really sustainably putting them into our lives if we've done the same thing. Otherwise, it's just noise.
Mm-hmm.
They
Because it can
don't,
be a painful process.
it's really painful, and it's not fast.
It's not always fun.
Not fun. It's not fast. But if we do the same thing, where we can be more empathetic with, it's really hard to completely overhaul the way that you eat. And I believe you can do it. And here are some strategies that have worked for me if you'd like to hear them. If you don't want to hear them, that's not our goal right now. It's very much a give and take. So instead of you're going to die if you don't change your diet, yeah, there's a time and place for that, but it doesn't put a habit in somebody's calendar to just deliver an edict and walk away. So I feel really strongly about this. And so you asked if pharmacists are trained to be health coaches. They're not trained to be health coaches. They can be, but they have coaching skills because we train people to do motivational interviewing. It's part of our curriculum. So we're starting,
Mm-hmm.
to really, like, to have those conversations about what is this patient's motivation? Why does this patient want to change? Why does this client want to change? What's important to them? It's not about what's important to me as a healthcare provider. It's about what's important to that person. So we have a long way to go to really put that in the curriculum, in my opinion, but they have the basic skills. They have the empathy. We all have the desire. It's why we went into pharmacy in the first place. But it's a process to learn to be a good coach
I love that.
or a
And
healer.
yes, yeah. I love what you said about being the guide.
Mhm.
Part of our training is really to just listen to what I say, just do as I say. This is, the protocol, very very analytical. And
Uh,
it discounts, if we were machines, it would work great. You just gotta, rewrite the programming language and done, boom. But we're not, we have human nature and all of these emotional and spiritual and mental things that impact our behaviors.
mhm.
For us to begin to address behavior and lifestyle modification in pharmacy, it's, to me, that's the future. That's where the profession is going overall. I'm hoping to see that across the board in healthcare, and I really hope that this healing medicine newsletter begins to pull some of these pieces together for healthcare professionals to really begin to see, this is how I could implement this first into my own life, because many times healing takes place by removing the the offending agent, to allow our bodies to do what they know how to do instinctively. So our bodies are made to heal. Our bodies are created with this intelligence of design that a computer doesn't know how to heal itself, but a human body does. And oftentimes it's the food that we're putting in our body, or like you said, the environment that we're being subjected to. If you can begin to notice what those stressors are and what those environmental triggers are, that you can begin, not necessarily burning everything down and completely removing them in one fell swoop, but begin to just take notice and take into account, when this person said this thing, it triggered this for me, and begin thinking in terms of self-awareness. For me, that's where the mindfulness piece comes in, to just say, let me take a breath before I respond to that, or let me take a breath and then choose not to respond to that. So for me, it's always created that like half a second space between the whatever someone says and my response. And I know you talk a lot about creating space in work, so tell us a little bit about your work and how you help clients. I think that a lot of pharmacists will be interested to kind of begin on this journey. How do you help people create more space in their lives, in their day-to-day interactions, in their calendars? What does that look like for you as a mindfulness coach?
Yeah. And so I don't use the word mindfulness unless the client uses the word mindfulness, to be quite honest. I often talk about peak performance and well-being because people are coming with stress and they know they want better performance and they want more well-being. Sometimes they say resilience. And then I sneakily will put mindfulness in there. So it's a strategy that's in one of the tools in the toolkit. But we really just look at overall their mental, emotional, spiritual, physical health, their surroundings, and relationships. So whatever the misery that's brought them there is what we address first. And I use mindfulness as a tool to really get them to slow down enough to know what it is. Because usually it's just, oh my God, I'm so stressed. So, we spend some time just dialing that down enough to pay attention. So when I talk about attention, can we have a little more conversation about that? Can we pay a little attention to that? That's when we start to get the depth of what they're really looking for. So I use mind mapping, I use mindfulness, I use a number of assessments to really figure out what it is that the client will respond to. So it's very customized, to be honest. I use a process that I call align. I don't necessarily tell the client that, but really trying to get clear on what is it that you want and are you doing that? Can we clear out all the things that aren't in alignment with the thing you just told me that you wanted? So that's where the mindfulness comes in, really.
I love that. And I think, it is, I think it'll resonate a lot with the people who are watching. So let us know if this is resonating. We want to facilitate these conversations because this is not something that's always discussed, especially in corporate healthcare. This idea of meeting the metrics and being productive, and it can really wear you down. And so if you're struggling in silence, part of what we want to do with this healing medicine show is facilitate these discussions and encourage you that you're not the only person at all that feels this way, that there is a community who are beginning to embrace more holistic healing modalities in addition to medication use and psychotherapy and some of our more traditional modern medicines in the healthcare system. So, Brigette, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. This has been a fantastic conversation. Is there a good place that we can find you, that we can put in the show notes for people that might be interested in learning more about your programs?
Sure. And so my website is aligned-engagement.com. You can find me on Facebook at Minding Your Minutes or Brigette Serfaty, or on LinkedIn as Brigette Serfaty. So I'd love to connect. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for watching our Healing Medicine show as part of the Healing Medicine newsletter. Again, if you found this helpful, we provide resources, tools for professional and personal development for health and healing professionals. If you want to share this with a colleague, we would be so honored for you to send them our show so that they too can begin their healing journey. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Healing Medicine Show.